Every project tells a story. There is a before, during, and after. I had the luxury of a window seat when we landed at Dubai Airport. I grew up in an Afrikaans household, and the very first English book that I read from cover to cover, without being forced to do so by an English school teacher, was James A. Michener's book, Caravans. After reading this book, I really wanted to see and experience a desert. Although Michener's story is set in Afghanistan, I had the same sense of excitement as Miller, a leading actor in the story, when he saw the desert the first time. In the words of Miller, "This was a rare moment for me, for we were about to enter upon the great world desert that sweeps from central India across Arabia, through Egypt, over the Sahara, and onto Morocco, where it is finally halted by the Atlantic Ocean. I had not previously seen this enormous desert, and now, as the early sun showed me the windswept land and the burning rocks, I knew I was entering a new world." When the doors of the Emirates Airbus A380 opened and I left the aeroplane, I somehow expected to hear Barbara Dickson singing the Caravan song, but instead my glasses immediately misted up in the 40+ degree heat as the sun started to rise, and I couldn't see a thing. What does this have to do with project management, you may ask? Well, Dubai is a marvel of the modern world and a great example of project management, property development on a massive scale. From a small fishing village in the early 1900s, it grew to the mega city that met me that day as our taxi left the airport. Every development starts with an idea that becomes a vision and then turns into a story. And I chose the story of Dubai as the beginning of our journey into the world of project management. Harold Samuel coined the phrase location, location, location in 1944 when he established the Land Securities, one of the United Kingdom's largest property companies. This reference is especially true in the case of Dubai. Ideally situated on the Persian Gulf, central in the Eurasian continent, it has easy access to Iran and the countries to the east, situated just across the Strait of Hormuz, and then via the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, it has access to the world via the Indian Ocean. In his book, A History of Future Cities, Daniel Brooke fittingly described Dubai as the city at the center of the world, connecting Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Pieces of pottery found by archaeologists indicate that Dubai merchants traded with China 2,000 years ago. Although so centrally located, Dubai did not show any population growth from the start of Islam in 630 AD until the beginning of the 20th century, partly because of the high temperatures hovering around 50 degrees Celsius. Growth only became a possibility when air conditioning was invented. Pirate activity threatened the British trade with India in the early 1800s. The British accordingly entered into a series of agreements with the local sheikhs to protect the trade routes, mainly to Bombay. The Maktoum family started to rule Dubai in 1833, and they kept the peace with the British in the region. Although the British spoke about developing the Dubai area that was, according to them, still stuck in the 7th century, they focused their attention on developing Bombay instead, building railways, hospitals, schools, and a big university there. Dubai did not even have its own currency and used the Indian rupee as legal tender. Dubai's break only came in 1900 when Persia increased their port taxes. Sheikh Maktoum bin Hashar, the ruler of Dubai, made it a tax-free, customs-free and license-free port, which attracted a lot of Persian merchants. Dubai became a city of two halves, separated by the Dubai Creek, a saltwater canal with Arabs living on the one side of the creek and Persians and Indians on the other side. A British visitor to Dubai recorded the following stats in 1908. A population of 10,000, 2 bazaars, 400 shops, 385 fishing and pearling boats, 380 donkeys, 960 goats and 1,750 camels. Sheikh Rashid Al Maktoum assumed power when his father died in 1958. The next year he visited Rome, Paris and London, and this visit would put Dubai on its current course. Hugely impressed by these international cities, especially London with its modern urban design and transport system, Sheikh Rashid decided to do the same in Dubai. His vision to convert Dubai into such an international city started in 1961 when he instructed that the Dubai Creek had to be made deeper to allow bigger trading ships to navigate the deeper waters right into the city. Realizing the importance of an international airport to link Dubai to the world, construction on Dubai's airport started in the early 1960s. The parking area at the time had more space available than all the cars in Dubai. Many investors thought these projects to be a bit too ambitious, and it became difficult to obtain finance. Oil was discovered in Dubai in 1966, just at the right time to provide the required funding for the various development projects going on. The problem, however, was that the oil reserves were in fact very small when compared to the other countries in the UAE. It was thought at the time that the oil reserves would only last about 20 years. Sheikh Rashid saw this as startup capital and decided that the funds generated by the oil discovery would be used as a means to establish Dubai as an international tourist destination. It was his vision to build a city that wasn't dependent on oil money. International talent in the form of architects, engineers and entrepreneurs were invited to Dubai. Jean Palafox, a recent urban planning graduate, was one of the army of experts that arrived in Dubai. The Sheikh himself explained the plan to Palafox as follows. Number 1. Bring Dubai from the third or fourth world into the first world within 15 years. Number 2. Design for 1 million people, although Dubai only had a population of 200,000 at the time. Number 3. Design Dubai as if there was no oil. Number 4. Make it the center of the Middle East. And number 5. Go around the world and copy. In 1979, the 39-story Dubai World Trade Center was inaugurated by Queen Elizabeth. This was the beginning. Sheikh Rashid, the visionary and driving force behind the Dubai idea, died in 1981. One of his sons, the 31-year-old Muhammad, took over where his father left off. When the Emirates Towers were completed in 2000, they were higher than any building in Europe. The Burj Khalifa, completed in 2010, was the tallest building in the world at the time. Driving his vision at ground level, Sheikh Mohammed was a regular visitor at building sites, driving himself around in his white Mercedes with its registration number Dubai 1. This registration number clearly conveyed his intentions for Dubai. It would be number 1 as well. Dubai needed its own airline, and the Dubai International Airport needed a fleet of aeroplanes. So in 1980, Sheikh Mohammed employed Sir Maurice Flanagan of British Airways fame to build Emirates as the new international airline of Dubai. Emirates was soon flying to major destinations all over the world, creating a gateway to Dubai for tourists, investors, and business people, mesmerized by the possibilities and opportunities available there. In 2002, Dubai allowed foreigners to own land there. This quickly turned the city into one of the biggest real estate markets in the world and attracted many of the super rich from across the world to own a piece of this pearl in the desert. Building developments in Dubai accelerated even more, with architects, engineers, and construction companies, big and small, flocking there and bringing with them the most ambitious and grandiose projects. The next step was to turn Dubai into a financial center that could compete with other financial centers like London and New York. Covering 110 hectares, Dubai's financial center was created as an economic zone with its own laws and regulations, almost forming a state within a city, much like the Vatican in Rome. International banking giants soon established offices there. This all sounds so well planned and process structured. Although a great deal of planning obviously went into Project Dubai, everything was not always 100% foreseen. Which brings us to Dubai's radical plan for 2040. Although there are many highways without any speed limits allowing cars to speed as fast as their drivers like, and with accidents the second highest cause of deaths after heart disease, there is very little public transport. Projects are disconnected from critical infrastructure. This came about because of the rapid expansion of the city, where building projects often ran ahead of the underlying infrastructure. The Burj Khalifa is an example of this. The skyscraper can accommodate 35,000 people, but it is apparently not hooked up to the city's sewerage system. So trucks arrive every morning to carry the waste to a sewage plant. The man-made island for the super rich, entirely dependent on water taxis and boats, is also apparently sinking back into the sea. All of this makes improvements a necessity. The Dubai 2040 project is marketed as a people-centric urban plan. According to the plan, 3 areas of Dubai will be redeveloped into new city centers, and 2 new city centers will be created. The focus will be on innovation, invention, and the development of 8 million square meters of new green areas for pedestrians and cyclists. The intention is to retrofit neighborhoods into smaller cities with their own business and recreational centers. A massive new public railway system is planned to operate within 800 meters of most of the population, giving easy access to the entire city. With this extensive public railway system, people will be able to reach all parts of the city, making the whole of Dubai basically walkable. Education and health facilities will be increased by 25%, while 60% will be exclusively for nature reserves and wildlife centers. In addition to creating massive amounts of green space, a number of new hotels and beaches are also planned. The strategy thus far has been one of build and they will come. The new approach is one of adapt so that they will stay. It is true, every project tells a story. The visible results achieved in Dubai within a period of 60 years is truly astounding. But imagine all the projects, programs and portfolios that happened behind the scenes, in boardrooms, offices and on paper. When asked what is the difference between a portfolio manager, a program manager and a project manager, many may answer that it is only the salary. Although intertwined, there are differences. A program is a collection of related projects. The projects may have to be completed in a specific order for the program to be considered complete. Because programs consist of multiple projects, they are larger in scope than a single project. A project manager is therefore in charge of a collection of related projects. Consider the following example. A car manufacturer wants to introduce a new vehicle to the market. In the process of designing and building this new vehicle, many teams focus on different aspects. Some may focus on the engine design, others on the bodywork, others on the electronics, others again on the navigation system, and so forth. Each of these tasks can be seen as a project, but only by working together will they be able to deliver the completed vehicle. These combined projects with the aim of successfully launching a new vehicle constitute a program. As can be seen from this diagram, there are some routine tasks or activities that can be consolidated into work packages that in turn combine into sub-projects and then projects. Different projects that aim to achieve the same outcome, result or deliverable make up a program. A project portfolio is a collection of projects, programs, subsidiary portfolios, and operations managed as a group that share some common link to one another. A portfolio manager is therefore in charge of a collection of projects. In his book, Effective Project Management, Garth Ward explains a project portfolio as similar to an air traffic control system. An airport, or the company, has a range of small, medium and large aircraft, or the projects, of different sizes, capability and capacity. Air traffic control, or the project portfolio management, is needed to track and monitor the pilots, the project managers, and define the air corridors and flight rules, the methodologies and project procedures that must be used. This ensures that flights are correctly prioritized, pre-flight checks or feasibility studies are carried out, and collisions avoided so that the whole program can be coordinated. All aircraft, big or small, need a destination, an objective, passengers or stakeholders, and a payload of goods or benefits to be delivered. Further, there must be a business case. All flights must add value to the airport's business objectives. All aircraft must register a flight plan, conform to the procedures, and they will need permission to take off at project launch and land at handover. The control tower staff or the portfolio project office will carry out a capability check. They will ensure that the airport has the right competencies to launch a flight. It will estimate the fuel or the budget required for each aeroplane and the number of crew or team members involved. Further, they will keep a log of the payload for each flight. Air traffic control may amalgamate some flights for more efficient use of fuel, numbers of crew and delivery of goods. Air traffic control or portfolio management will also provide a weather forecast of the risk involved and advise the crew on the actions to be taken. Pilots study these weather forecasts in detail to ensure that the risks are identified, avoided, and controlled to provide as smooth a flight as possible. Sensibly, no pilot is allowed to fly unless they have done the necessary hours on a flight simulator or having managed a smaller project first. Organizations design long-term strategies to achieve long-term goals. Ongoing operations are then introduced to achieve these long-term goals. Normal business operations are designed to do one thing over a long period of time, resulting in a sense of stability, captured within a business model with dedicated process that can be repeated over the long term. The world has, however, changed, and disruption has replaced stability. Projects, being temporary by nature, traditionally exist outside normal operations. Projects are designed to produce specific deliverables. Once these deliverables have been accepted by the client, the project ends. This short-term focus of projects causes many to believe that project managers are highly task-orientated and not so much people-orientated. The fact that this is not true will become evident as we proceed. The fact that projects are unique and non-repetitive makes them more risky. Being more complex than normal operations, projects require more policy, procedures, and instructions regarding what to do, when to do it, and how it should be done. These instructions could come from different sources within an organization, making the lines of reporting more complex. The Project Management Institute publishes guides to the project management body of knowledge, also known as PMBOK, every 3 to 5 years. The 7th edition of PMBOK was released at the end of 2021. The previous edition, the 6th edition of PMBOK, mainly focused on waterfall project management techniques. Waterfall is a more traditional approach to project management. As a linear system of working, it requires the team to complete each phase of a project before moving on to the next phase. The waterfall approach works best for projects with firm timelines and well-defined deliverables. If the major project constraints, namely time, cost, scope, quality, and risk, are well understood and documented, then the waterfall approach works very well. The 6th edition identified 5 project management process groups, remembered as IPECC: initiating, planning, executing, controlling and monitoring, and closing. Edward Demings had a similar approach with his Plan, Do, Check, Act. In the same vein, the PMBOK approach can be described as start, plan, do, check, finish. The PMBOK framework in this manner breaks project management tasks into distinguishable and sequential steps. There is a natural logic to this approach. In day-to-day, we do the same. We start something, we think about it, we do it, we stay on top of it by making sure that things are progressing according to plan, and finally, we finish it. The 6th edition also identified 10 knowledge areas that were aligned to each process group in a project management framework. These knowledge areas are: 1. Integration, which involves the ability to combine different components into a single unit. Scope determines what the project is required to deliver, within a certain time, at a certain cost, in compliance with the client's quality requirements, through the collective effort of a number of people, keeping everybody up to date with developments by means of constant communication, identifying and managing the risks involved, procuring the required labor, components, and intellectual property, engaging all stakeholders with an interest in the outcome of the project. So the 10 knowledge areas are integration, scope, time, cost, quality, human resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder. These knowledge areas can be easily remembered from the following sentence: I saw the customer quote his common requirements plan systematically. With a fast pace of technology, competition is harsher than it was ever before. Product life cycles are shorter, and the requirements of a project can change quickly depending on internal and external factors. Disruptive forces in the business environment require that organizations and professionals adapt more quickly to changes in the market. This is where an agile approach works best. The agile methodology is more suited to projects where the constraints of time, cost, scope, quality, and risk are not well understood. Agile is best suited for projects where it is difficult to determine the scope and timeline in advance. For example, when developing a new product. Agile is flexible, allowing for the project to be planned in stages or sprints to evolve as the work progresses. Agile also allows the team to work simultaneously on different phases of the project. Professionals now have the responsibility to select the most appropriate approach, whether it be a predictive waterfall approach, an agile approach, or a hybrid of the two. Whereas the previous editions of PMBOK were mainly based on processes and knowledge areas within a waterfall approach, the 7th edition is based on principles and domains to cater for an agile approach in project management. The 6th edition focused on the deliverables and identified specific knowledge areas in terms of processes, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. The 7th edition focuses on the value outcomes of a project and standards that are principle-based rather than process-based. Although projects do produce products or deliverables, they must deliver outcomes that create value for the organization and its stakeholders. The 7th edition accordingly introduces a value-based system that focuses on delivering valuable outcomes rather than just deliverables. In line with the intention to shift from a process-based approach to a principle-based approach, the 7th edition introduces 8 performance domains instead of knowledge areas and 12 project delivery principles rather than process areas. Projects are seen as fundamental components of the value delivery system, and the 12 principles are intended to guide project managers, team members, and stakeholders on how to achieve intended outcomes that will deliver value. When comparing the 6th edition and the 7th edition, it is evident that they represent two different approaches. Whereas the 6th edition is prescriptive in terms of processes, the 7th edition introduces a set of principles to guide the mindset, actions, and behaviors of project teams to deliver project outcomes in an agile manner based on a customer-centric design. In the 6th edition, the focus was on specific processes to convert inputs into outputs with the use of certain tools and techniques. The 7th edition, on the other hand, sees domains of interacting, interdependent areas of activity with performance outcomes. The 7th edition, however, still acknowledges the need for certain tools, techniques, artifacts, and frameworks to get the job done. Both editions acknowledge the influence of internal and external forces within the project environment. Whereas the 6th edition approach works for most projects, especially waterfall projects, the 7th edition with its agile approach works for any project. The 6th and 7th edition differs with regard to their intended target audience. The 6th edition is aimed mainly at project managers. The 7th edition includes anyone involved in a project team, while specifically considering the different team members and their respective roles, the project lead, the sponsor, and the project owner. Previous versions of the PMBOK introduced gradual changes based on experience to improve with every successive version. The 7th edition introduces a whole new principle-based approach with a focus on value. Although previous versions did refer to the need to tailor the approach bearing in mind the unique needs of a project, the 7th version includes a whole section specifically on how this can be done, how to tailor an approach under unique circumstances. This does not mean that process-based approaches are not relevant or useful anymore. Many organizations and project management practitioners continue to use conventional project management delivery methods. Conventional approaches remain relevant in the context of the 7th edition as well. The following quote is from the 7th edition. "Nothing in this edition negates alignment with the process-based approach of past editions. Many organizations and practitioners continue to find that approach useful for guiding their project management capabilities, aligning their methodologies, and evaluating their project management capabilities. That approach, meaning the process-based approach, remains relevant in the context of this new edition." Although project management approaches can change, project management standards should, however, at all times focus on successful project completion and value delivery. The 6th edition provided an operational framework by organizing the 5 process groups and the 10 knowledge areas into a matrix. This matrix then introduced 47 processes aimed at getting things done. The 7th edition identifies a value delivery system. Value management is described as a management approach that focuses on motivating people, developing skills, and fostering synergies and innovation with the ultimate goal of optimizing overall organizational performance. Business value is achieved in several ways, including the alignment of business strategy and execution, integration of business functions, navigating, evaluating, and watching environmental and business ambiguity, achieving enterprise scalability, management collaboration, and reduced time to profit. Strategies and decisions based on value decide portfolios. Programs and projects must ensure that the objectives of the portfolios are achieved. Programs and projects in turn also impact on business operations. The value created within the business operations must align with the value decisions envisaged by the strategy. A performance analysis will reveal whether value was indeed added in the process. Portfolios are then, based on the results of this value performance analysis, reviewed or adjusted. The new approach acknowledges that portfolios, programs, and projects, although temporary in nature, do not operate in isolation, and that they do and should impact on business operations where the value is actually unlocked. In this manner, project management links strategy, where the value is planned for, and operations, where the value is actually produced. This system for value delivery shows 2 portfolios consisting of programs and projects operating within the internal environment and with due regard to influences from the external environment. It also shows a standalone program with projects and standalone projects not associated with any portfolios or programs. Certain activities are common to all projects. Somebody has an idea on how to introduce something new or improve something already in place. During the concept stage, the aim is to obtain a charter or an official mandate for the proposed project, to identify all the stakeholders that might be interested in or affected by this new idea, and to obtain their support and buy-in. With this done, the project can then move to stage 2, where plans and sub-plans are made to determine the scope of the project and elements involving the duration of the project, the costs, quality requirements, human resources required, ways to ensure effective communication with all involved, areas of risk and ways to mitigate the risk, decisions regarding procurement, and a confirmation of the stakeholders. People often go from thinking to doing. It's natural for us to be creative and think conceptually. The same is true of doing. People like to design, make and construct. Doing is a natural process. Problems often occur though because of a failure to plan. People are inclined to skip the planning stage. Many project failures can be attributed to a lack of planning. This is not a flaw in the project process. It is rather a failure on the part of the project management team. The next stage, the implementation stage, is the doing part of the project. This is where the deliverable is actually produced in line with the predetermined quality standards by the team mandated to do so with whatever items that needed to be procured. Information is shared to ensure that everybody in whatever part of the portfolio program or project they may be working is on the same page. With the project in full swing, the next stage is monitoring and control. The aspects that require specific attention during this stage are ensuring that the project remains within scope, on time, within budget, while producing the predetermined deliverable in line with the required quality criteria, and that procurement processes are correctly implemented. With the project complete, it is then time to close all project and procurement activities. The 7th edition framework is iterative. Plans are made, executed and continually adjusted throughout the duration of the project. Finally, when the sub-plans are complete, the project is closed out and all ongoing procurement activities are wrapped up and formally closed. This approach causes projects to go through a series of phases or stages that form a distinct pattern. These phases, from concept to planning to execution, can be shown in a graph that indicates the major milestones and the amount of activity per stage. It is obvious that most activity is expected during the execution stage. This graph illustrates the problems associated with the scope of a project. During the concept and feasibility stage, there is normally a lot of enthusiasm on what the project could deliver, and expectations are often very high. As soon as costs are taken into consideration and the drivers of the project need to negotiate for funds, a damper is placed on these expected outcomes and what the project is able to deliver. The scope of the project is then agreed as per the budget allowed, and execution of the project begins. The original dreams, hopes or expectations are, however, not forgotten, and very soon participants and stakeholders involved inevitably try to add some additional components to the project. Welcome to the danger of scope creep. Clients often have big ideas but limited funds. In order to reduce costs while still making the project financially viable, the scope of work is often reduced. If the budget cannot get bigger, then the ideas must get smaller. Changes in scope can also occur because of changes in market conditions and business requirements. Be prepared. There is no such being as a client who will not attempt to make changes to the project at some stage or another. Once the project is approved and has got the go-ahead, there is a natural tendency to want to put back all the features that were removed. Projects have a definite start date. Before the project starts, the staff level is 0. The project manager has to find the resources required to get the project going. Consequently, projects tend to start slowly. The number of people involved in the early phases, that is the study and planning phases, is small compared to those required during the execution phases. Once construction or production starts, the number of people rises very rapidly. The personnel build up to a peak and then fall back to end again at zero at project completion. Costs also increase during the execution stage. The rule of thumb is that 85% of the project costs are incurred during the execution phase. This means that 15% of the costs are incurred during the concept and planning stages. What makes this scary is that 15% spent during the early stages determines the success of 85% in the later stages. The focus will shift during the different phases of the project. In the early phases, with strong external pressures, the focus is on financial and cost issues. As the project moves into the execution phase, the focus shifts to meeting time deadlines. Finally, at the end of the project, commissioning and setting to work, the focus shifts to quality. The scope triangle shows the various constraints within which the project team must operate, namely cost, time, available resources, and risk, all affecting scope and quality. Scope, also known as a statement of work or SOW, is a statement that defines the boundaries of the project. It specifies what will be done, but also what will not be done. This document is the foundation for all project work to follow. It is critical that the scope be correct. Two types of quality are part of every project, namely the quality of the deliverables from the project and the quality of the project management process itself. A sound quality management program with processes in place that monitor the work in a project is a good investment. Not only does it contribute to client satisfaction, but it helps organizations use their resources more effectively and efficiently by reducing waste and revisions. Cost is a major consideration throughout the project management lifecycle. The project proposal normally includes an estimate, perhaps even a quote, of the total cost of the project. Time is an interesting resource. It cannot be stored as inventory. It is consumed whether it is used or not. The objective for the project manager is to use the future time allotted to the project in the most effective and productive way possible. Resources are assets such as people, equipment, physical facilities, or inventory with limited availabilities. Resources can be scheduled or leased from an outside party. Some resources are fixed, others are variable. In any case, they are central to the scheduling of project activities and the orderly completion of the project. Risk is always present and spans all parts of the project, both external as well as internal, and affects the management of the other 5 constraints. The natural instinct of business owners is to ask for the lowest cost. The project manager wants the shortest schedule, and the users want the highest quality. Managing the project scope is a critical component of any project. If the 5 variables are prioritized in a matrix, it can greatly assist when the need arises to decide on project plan revisions. A common application of this matrix occurs whenever a scope change request is made. In this example, it is evident that time and the availability of resources are crucial factors. This reminds me of the story of the shoemaker. His shop was in a very busy financial center. Many ladies rushed between the buildings in their high-heel shoes to attend meetings and do work. The problem, or rather the opportunity from the shoemaker's point of view, was that the area between the buildings was paved with uneven paving stones. Many ladies broke the heels of their shoes while navigating the uneven paving, which obviously resulted in good business for the shoemaker. The shoemaker, however, often received requests from ladies who urgently needed their shoes fixed. Remember, the shoemaker already had a number of shoes received earlier and waiting for repairs. Under such circumstances, a request for a rush job, the shoemaker took out a shoebox containing 3 tennis balls. On one ball was written price, the other ball was marked speed, and the third ball said quality. The shoemaker then asked the clients to choose 2 balls. They could only choose 2 of the 3. If they chose speed, a rush job, then they had the choice between price and quality. If they chose the ball marked low price, then they couldn't expect a quality job. It would be a temporary repair that would last for the day or to get them to their meeting on time, but they would have to bring the shoe back later for a proper repair. If they chose speed and quality, then it would obviously cost more. The task of the project manager is to manage the project or scope and deliver by a specified time, within a specified budget, and to meet a specified standard of performance, which must include safety, other aspects being quality, value, and benefit. We can now align the 6th edition and the 7th edition. The 6th edition, as has already been said, was all about processes during the various project phases that typically in the past occurred on a waterfall basis. It still makes sense to put the stages into a sequence of steps that can form the basis of the project management approach. During the idea stage, a business or organization thinks of a need. Oftentimes it's a new facility, plant, or product. The reasons for a project normally involve realizing a return on investment, achieving some strategic objective, complying with legislation, political and social needs. Some projects can also be ego or vanity projects, and the suggestion is to better avoid these. The concept is then studied. The concept is then examined to determine if it's feasible and realistic, a viable business proposition that will create value. If the concept is found to be feasible, an execution plan is developed. This normally involves the creation of a basic design. Once the basic design is agreed upon, detailed drawings for each element or component are produced. The scope of work is determined and a budget and schedule is agreed upon. Decisions are made with regard to the quality requirements and the resources needed to finalize the project. A procurement plan is decided and the necessary services, materials and equipment are purchased. The project deliverable is produced, installed or constructed. During the commission or setting to work, the deliverable is thoroughly tested to ensure that it satisfies the requirements of the project. It is then handed over and the project ends. The 7th edition, while acknowledging that these procedures remain valid, introduces standards and guides. The standards confirm the role of project management as a delivery system. Projects successfully delivered must realize value for the business. Projects are therefore considered as systems to deliver value. This value is achieved through customer satisfaction, the creation of a new product or service, the improvement of a process, or the implementation of a new change that can enhance the processes and operations. Based on the business values and outcomes of the delivered projects, organizations derive their strategy to initiate new portfolios. The direct impact of projects on operations is acknowledged and evident from this diagram. Based on the business values and outcomes of the delivered projects, organizations derive their strategy to initiate new portfolios. The direct impact of projects on operations is acknowledged and evident from this diagram. Project management and delivery is affected by the internal business environment, which includes process assets, governance, data, knowledge, security and safety, culture, structure, resources and capabilities. External environmental factors such as market conditions, technology, disruption, socio-cultural influences, regulations, big data, academic research, industry standards, finance and infrastructure also impact on project management. The 7th edition uses the term project delivery instead of project management to cover both the outcomes as well as the deliverables of a project. The 12 principles of the 7th edition define the what and why of the project delivery. A principle is defined as a statement, a truth, or rule that guides and leads our thoughts and actions. Principles guide actions but do not specify in detail how to do things, and for that reason it can be said that principles are not strict. Project delivery principles therefore aim to describe a fundamental truth, norms, or values. In order to ensure the intended outcomes of the project delivery, project team members must follow these principles. The 12 project management principles require all involved in a project to demonstrate the following. 1. Stewardship. Be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. Carry out activities with integrity, care, and trustworthiness, while maintaining compliance with internal and external guidelines. Team members demonstrate a broad commitment to the financial, social, and environmental impacts of the project they support. 2. Team. Create a collaborative project team environment. Project teams that work collaboratively can accomplish a shared objective more effectively and efficiently than individuals working on their own. 3. Stakeholders. Engage stakeholders to understand their interests and needs. 4. Value. Focus on value. Align the project with the objectives of the organization. Continually evaluate and adjust project alignment to business objectives and intended benefits and value. 5. Systems thinking. Recognize, evaluate, and respond to system interactions with the aim to respond to the dynamic circumstances within and surrounding the project in a holistic way to positively affect project performance. 6. Leadership. Motivate, influence, train, and learn. Demonstrate leadership behaviors in areas of honesty, integrity, and ethical conduct, and adapting leadership style to the situation. 7. Tailoring. Adapt the project approach according to the context. 8. Quality. Incorporate quality into processes and results. Maintain a focus on quality that produces deliverables that meet project objectives and align to the needs, uses, and acceptance requirements set forth by the relevant stakeholders. 9. Complexity. Address complexity using knowledge, experience, and learning. Continually evaluate and navigate project complexity so that approaches and plans enable the project team to successfully navigate the project life cycle. 10. Risk, both opportunities and threats. Optimize responses to opportunities and threats. Maximize positive impacts and minimize negative impacts to the project and its outcomes. 11. Adaptability and resilience. Be adaptable and resilient depending on the context to help the project accommodate change, recover from setbacks, and advance the work of the project. 12. Change management. Enable change to achieve the expected future state. Project performance domains are areas of knowledge that must be focused on when managing the project. The goal is not only to provide deliverables, but also value. The 8 performance domain areas are shown here. 1. Team. Develop high performance teams. 2. Stakeholders. Build good relationships with stakeholders. 3. Life cycle. Develop appropriate phases and approaches for the project. 4. Planning. Carry out adequate planning at each precise moment. 5. Navigating between uncertainty and ambiguity. Analyze the project environment to anticipate risk and seize opportunities. 6. Delivery. Make sure the project delivers value. 7. Performance measurement. Track to ensure results are achieved. 8. Project work. Deliver results. The way these domains interact and combine is typically different in each project. The 7th edition provides a framework and guidance to enable project managers to adapt or tailor their approaches for each project. Conventional cascading or waterfall project management approaches with sequential steps and processes made it difficult to adapt quickly to changing requirements in projects. That is why agile methods and approaches to project management emerged. Project managers must have the ability to apply different approaches to managing projects depending on the characteristics of each project, the specific industry, stakeholder requirements, and the organization itself. These approaches can be predictive, agile, hybrid, or cascading. The 7th edition includes a series of models, methods, and artifacts that can be used or implemented to manage projects. This diagram also confirms the fact that the intention behind the 7th edition is not to totally replace the previous process-based approach. Many of these models, methods, and artifacts were mentioned in earlier versions of the PMBOK, confirming the usefulness of the process-based approach when combined with a new policy-based approach. It remains important to have processes, models, methods, and artifacts that explain the objectives of a project, as well as the what if, the who, the how, the when, and the how much. As is evident from this diagram, it is useful to explain this with models, methods, and artifacts. A model is defined as a thinking strategy to explain a process, framework, or a phenomenon. A method is the means for achieving an outcome, output, result, or project deliverable. An artifact can be a template, a document, output, or a project deliverable. When I introduced the 6th edition matrix with its 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas, I mentioned 47 tasks. This page shows the various tasks associated with each project stage. During the first stage, initiating, 2 elements are important, namely developing a project charter and identifying the stakeholders. Each task requires some inputs, tools, and techniques to deliver an output. The inputs needed to develop a project charter are a project statement of work, a business case, agreements, due consideration of the organization's environmental factors, and an understanding of the organization's process assets. The tools and techniques employed include expert judgment and facilitation techniques to get the process underway. The end result or output of this stage should be a project charter or mandate to proceed with the project. Before finalizing a stakeholder register as output, it is likewise necessary to obtain certain inputs and the use of certain tools and techniques. During the planning stage, items to consider include stakeholder management, the development of a project management plan, planning the scope management, collecting requirements, defining the scope of the project, and creating a work breakdown structure. A lot of attention is given to risk during the planning stage, including risk management planning, identifying the risks, performing both a qualitative and a quantitative risk analysis, and planning the responses to these risks. The timing and duration of the project is considered with reference to the activities, the sequence of the activities, the estimated resources and durations in order to develop a schedule for the project. A quality plan is considered, human resource requirements are estimated, a procurement plan is produced and costs planned for, estimated, and a budget is determined. During the execution stage, a project team is established and developed, and the project work is attended to. Stakeholder engagement and communication measures are put in place, quality assurance is performed, and any needed items are procured. Monitoring and controlling focuses on the scope, the time schedule, cost control, quality control, effective communication, risk management, procurement, stakeholder engagement, and project control. During the closing stages of a project, the focus shifts to closing the project and any procurement arrangements that may still exist. I'm not going to deal with each of these aspects in this video, since we will attend to this during the workshop and with reference to a specific case study. But you should by now appreciate the enormous amounts of work and effort that goes into a successfully concluded project. As I mentioned right at the beginning, every project has a story. There is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an end. Not all of us have been or will be involved in a project on the scale of what was achieved in Dubai. But this is how one project manager explained it. Operations keep the lights on. Strategy provides a light at the end of the tunnel. But project management is the train engine that moves the organization forward. I hope that all your projects will provide value and a lot of stories that you can tell around the dinner table.